My name is Eric Spencley, and after using this miter saw for a couple months now, I think it's time for an honest review on Spencley Design Co. First, let's jump back in time to when I got this saw a couple months ago. The saw comes in a massive orange box, and the very first thing you'll find on the inside is the hold down clamp. Then the instruction manual and the dust bag. Both of those are useless. Then there's the dust collection hose adapter. That'll come in handy. Then there's the extension support brackets. And lastly, these little brace guys that hold on the support brackets. Now let's get to the good part, the saw. This massive styrofoam block is a little overkill, but at least you know that it's safe from UPS throwing around your packages. It's got a nice carrying handle on top, so I can pop it up on the workbench, unwrap all of the plastic, and remove some additional styrofoam supports. On the underside of the saw, I can attach the support bracket using the silver brace and tighten it down with a washer and hex nut. Repeat the same thing on the other side, and you're just about done. On top, you can toss the dust bag on, then you're ready to roll. So that was just a little bit of unboxing action, but now we're back in present day. So first, let's go over some very basic functions of the saw and how everything works. So on the very back, there's a small latch that allows you to lock in the sliding capability of the saw itself. So when that slide lock is engaged, it is not going to be able to travel forward and back. So all I have to do is disengage that slide lock, and now the saw moves freely forward and backwards. This is definitely one of the first things that you're gonna notice how nice this is. This sliding mechanism is insanely smooth compared to the traditional sliding miter saws that run on those little bars. It takes virtually no effort to move this, and it is super, super smooth. One thing that I do want to point out about the sliding mechanism, if it's either too loose or too tight, all you have to do is adjust these screws here and you can dial in the perfect tension. I'm sure the next thing you're going to know is, what about the miters? So for the miter system on this, it has a locking handle, so all you have to do is unlock it, and then you depress the button on top and you can easily slide it to any miter that you need. You will notice that there are positive stops built in at common angles such as 0, 15, 22.5, 31.6, and 45 degrees. And one of the great things about this is that once it's set in one of those trenches, you can tighten it down and this is not going anywhere. And to give you an example, I'm gonna hit it with a hammer and show you that it doesn't move. And what about if you're at an uncommon angle, let's say 13 degrees. Is it strong there? Yep. Now setting the bevel on this saw is also super easy, and that starts right here in this handle. Lifting this mechanism up disengages the bevel lock, and then on the back side, you release this, which disengages the pin that locks it into those common angles. Now you can very easily bevel the saw to whatever measurement that you need. Once it's beveled how you want it, just push this down and lock everything in. And just like the gauge on the front of the saw, the bevel gauge also has positive stops at common angles. Just use the lever on the back to engage or disengage that pin. And if you look closely, you'll probably notice that a bevel cut like this is gonna run straight into the fence. But that's no problem because you can easily adjust these fences and slide them to wherever you need them to be. But to be completely honest, for what I do, I'll probably never move these. Now with all of that out of the way, let's make some cuts. Before I get to the cutting, I wanted to point out the switch on top. This turns on and off the LED light, but why would you want that? This light casts a shadow on the blade so you can see exactly where it's going to cut. No awkward lasers to try to calibrate here. This red button starts the saw, but it's locked unless you also hold down the safety button. Going back in time again, here's a shot of the very first time I ever used the saw. And I obviously forgot to attach the dust bag. To my surprise, right out of the box, this thing was dead on. However, if your saw isn't perfectly accurate, you can easily adjust everything. If the positive stops on your miter gauge are wrong, just loosen these bolts here and reposition it to dial in the perfect calibration. If the positive stops on your bevel gauge are wrong, again, just loosen those bolts there and readjust this to dial in the perfect calibration. If your fence is positioned incorrectly, just simply slide off the auxiliary fences, and then you've got access to the bolts underneath. As we all know, the stock blades that come with these saws are terrible, so you're gonna wanna change the blade, and luckily that's super easy to do. There's a wrench that's included in the back of the saw that can easily be popped out. And over here on the front of the saw, there's a button that you can depress here that locks the spindle. Then just use that included wrench to loosen the blade. Easy. And while I'm here, I should probably point out that this lever here locks the chopping action. Pull it out, and you can easily bring the saw up and down, or push it in, and the saw locks itself in place. So you probably want to know, how's the dust collection on this thing? Well, let's see. Now you could probably feel that through the screen, but let's take a closer look. So as you could tell, just like every other miter saw, the dust collection was terrible with just a bag, but let's see how it performs with a shop vac connected. So that was definitely an improvement with the hose attached, but let's slow it down. So as you can see, the dust collection on this thing is pretty much just like every other miter saw. It's not very good. But let me show you closer what everything looks like all around here. So after making just 5 cuts on this 2x4 here, this is the kind of mess that I'm talking about. It's all over the bench, it's all over the saw, all over the back, and yes, that is with the dust hose attached. It goes all the way out over here on the bench, all the way out on my table saw, and all over some of my notes for this video. So yeah, this thing, it's messy. Now, one of the features of the saw that I was really excited to test out was the trenching feature. So all I do is I lower this lever here, and now you can see that the saw doesn't actually go all the way down. This allows you to cut tons of stuff like dados and other grooves into lumber to make all of your joinery a little bit easier. Now, in order for this to work, you do need some sort of sacrificial fence to go on the back that pushes your piece out. Otherwise, your trench cut will look like this, where you have the curvature of the blade along the cut. So other than the dust collection being pretty bad on this, which it's pretty bad on almost every miter saw, this thing seems pretty good, right? Well, I think it's time that I address some of the downsides of the saw. And the first is the hold down clamp that comes with this. Now, if you've never seen one of these, it's because almost every saw on the market comes with one and they're absolute
crap. Pure, unadulterated crap.
It fits into the back of the saw here, and then to hold down your piece, you turn, and 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 you keep turning, and eventually, now your piece is held down. Now, I don't know about you, but that is a huge pain, and that is why almost no one ever uses these things. The one exception is that the Festool Capex comes with a clamp that is way faster and way simpler.
That's now my stop. I'm gonna bring this down.
That should really be a standard on all miter saws. Now, I know the one thing that people are really gonna wanna know about this saw is how accurate is the sliding on it. Well, to test that out, I'm gonna pair it with the trenching feature. That way you can actually see if there's any deviation as the saw slides. So I've got a board securely clamped down to this and it has no ability to move anywhere. So let's test out the trench. So there's what that trench cut looks like, and it looks pretty good, right? Well, let's make a couple more cuts. So to test how accurate the sliding is, I'm going to remove these clamps and I'm gonna position the board over just a little bit further, and then I'm gonna make multiple cuts to see if this sliding mechanism can actually keep the blade straight in that trench. It's important to point out here that I'm not intentionally trying to push the saw side to side or keep it perfectly straight. I'm really just trying to cut as I naturally would and not do anything special. All right, let's bring it in and see how it did. So this kerf line here was one singular cut, and this kerf line here was multiple cuts. As you can see, this one is substantially wider than this one here. So to give you a better idea, this is about 1/4 of an inch, and this one here is about 1/8 of an inch. So almost twice as wide. So what does that kind of discrepancy tell us? Well, that tells us that when you bring the saw out with the sliding mechanism, try to take multiple cuts, you're not actually getting perfectly straight. The saw has the tendency to move side to side. So if you're doing something that requires really high precision, this probably isn't gonna be it for you. But let's take a closer look. So if I take some material and butt it right up against the saw blade and then tighten it all down, we can see that there's virtually zero gap. However, if I put just a super small amount of pressure on the handle, you can see that this deflects, about 1/8 inch or so. And that's with the saw recessed all the way back. And if you slide it out, it gets even worse. Now, I was pretty bummed with how inaccurate the sliding mechanism on this was, so on Instagram, I asked anybody who owned a Festool Capex, which is probably the most expensive miter saw that you can buy out there, and asked them to send me some videos of theirs, and here's what they sent me.
There's one more view with a wider piece of plywood. I think it'll help show your deflection versus the Capex. That's pretty much all the weight I got to try to deflect it off. I may get 1/8 of an inch, but you really got to push it off during the cut to get it to deflect that much. Very small movements, you're really not going to get much at all.
So as you can see, even with a miter saw that's 3 times as expensive as this, you're still going to have a little side-to-side play. But let's listen one more time, and this time listen carefully to the words.
That's pretty much all the weight I got to try to deflect it off.
You'll notice that he said that he's using almost all of his weight to get the blade to deflect, whereas I'm using just my pinky. Which is why if I'm looking to do a super accurate crosscut, I'm still gonna lean on my miter gauge or my crosscut sled to get that perfectly accurate cut. Now, one thing that I do want to point out about this saw is because it's made by a different manufacturer, it does not carry Ridgid's typical lifetime service agreement. Instead, it just has a 5-year warranty. Now, before I get to the conclusion of whether or not I think you should buy this saw, leave a comment down below that says mayonnaise. I read every single comment, so write mayonnaise and then your question, and I promise that I'll get back to you. That just lets me know that you actually watched the video, unlike most people on YouTube. Now, before I get too far into this, I do want to disclose that yes, Ridgid sent this to me for free. However, I am under zero obligation to say anything positive. They have no control over any of the stuff that I'm saying in this video, and if I wanted to, I could tell you that this was the absolute worst saw I've ever used. So what I'm trying to tell you is everything that I say in this video is 100% my own opinion and not influenced by the brand. So should you buy this saw? Well, I really think it all comes down to personal preference and what you are actually building. Would I recommend this saw for somebody who's looking to make high-end furniture and needs precision cuts with perfect glue seams? No. Would I recommend this to somebody who's cutting down construction lumber? Maybe you're doing something like building a deck, putting up walls or something like that? Absolutely. This thing would be perfect for that kind of job. Would I recommend this saw to somebody who's looking to get extremely precise trim carpentry? No. Would I recommend this saw to somebody who's looking to take it on a job site and just cut down construction lumber all day? Absolutely. So I think the buying advice really gets sorted out into 2 distinct fields. If you're somebody who's looking for a portable miter saw that will quickly and easily lock into angles all the time without you having to double check them, and you're not really worried about your cuts being off maybe 1/8 to 1/16 of an inch, this would be a fantastic bet. This thing plows through 2x material all day long, and you're gonna be really happy with this miter saw. But if you're somebody who's looking at this saw thinking they're gonna get the exact same precision they would from a miter gauge or maybe a crosscut sled on your table saw, I think you're gonna be disappointed with the play and the sliding mechanism. Now, furniture makers know that their cuts are absolutely critical, and to be honest with you, I just wouldn't trust putting any finished pieces through this if I'm looking for a super accurate cut. However, it would still be great for rough material breakdown at the start of a project.